welcome. My name is Versandra Williams, and you're watching Street Beat. From trial to triumph, our guest today has managed to not only get herself off the streets, but is now helping others to do the same. Versandra Kennebrew is the author of Thank God for the Shelter, which is a memoir about her time being homeless. She's giving back by opening Hunter House, a housing initiative to provide shelter for teenaged girls who have aged out of foster care. Thank you, Ms. Kennebrew, for being with us today.
Thank you, Versandra.
I'd like to have you explain to our audience about your story.
Well, to make it really short, my story began in about 2003 when I moved into a local hotel because I pretty much lost everything. I was evicted from my apartment because the company that I worked for 9 years went out of business. I transferred to the Detroit area because my father had cancer and I wanted to be closer to care for him. But in the process of all of this, there was major downsizing. 2000 is the year that the company went out of business, and I tried to maintain for about 3 years, figuring out how to do this without transferring back to Maryland, which is where I came from. And in the process of all of this, I went to a deep state of depression, and the depression took me to homelessness. And I didn't even know what homelessness really was at the time because my only vision of it was what I had seen on television. And of course, that's not a true picture of what homelessness really is. So being in the hotel for a year and every day trying to figure out how to make $39 to stay another night was really something. And actually it's very expensive as well, but it was the only way I knew to maintain and, you know, not be on the streets. And then after a while, the depression got so bad that it led to a suicide attempt. And then finally, I had to go and seek counseling and get on medication to manage the depression. And I, in a state of brief sanity, I decided to go to COTS, which is the Coalition on Temporary Shelter, and they provide transitional housing for women and children. And so I was one of the few single women in their transitional facility called Peggy's Place. And from that point on, I was able to get myself back on track, find full-time employment, teaching massage therapy, which is my profession, and then moving beyond that and getting out of the shelter, and today living on the Detroit River in a condo that's paid for in full because now I know how to better manage not only my stress and the depression, but cash.
Well, speaking of cash flows, you said that by trade you are a massage therapist.
Yes.
Tell me how you became an author. When did the inspiration hit for you to say, I should write a book about this?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I don't get a chance to answer it very often. There's a friend of mine who one day she heard me say, I thank God for the shelter because this is what I learned. And I would say that frequently. And she said, wait a minute, I've heard you say that a few times. Are you trying to tell me that you were homeless? And she had known me throughout this process, but she never knew that I had been homeless. And so I explained to her, yes, I had. And she's like, you know, Versandra, look at your business. Look at how successful you are. Look at how you're traveling and you're doing workshops and this and that. And she's like, you need to tell people how you got to that point. How did you get from homelessness to where you are in your business? And finally, she said a few key words that really stood out and resonated in my spirit. And that was, if you do not share your story, you would be doing a disservice to humanity. And when she said that, a light just turned on. And I said, wait a minute. This isn't about just telling people that I was homeless and I had hard times. It's about telling people what I had to do to come from there to where I am today. And that's what made me want to write the book.
Wow. Well, speaking of light, please tell us about the Hunter House project.
Yes, Hunter House, I found through all of my studying about homelessness and being an advocate and going to the national conferences and speaking at some of those conferences that children between under 18 are the fastest growing population in the homeless segment. And basically 1/3 of homeless people are under age 18. Wow. And the primary reason why was because so many currently live in the foster care system, and at age 18, they're aged out and they cannot continue to live in that facility or in that organization, and so they have to find another way, and most of the time they don't learn the life skills necessary to live on their own. So I decided that in Detroit, since this is a major population and they're staying in vacant houses and all types of non-traditional places to live, and I wanted to create a housing facility that would give them the life skills, support them as they transition into adulthood, and give them some mentoring that would help them along the way as they chose their prospective life courses.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful, and I know that our viewers would want to get involved in that project. So I would like to thank you for being on with us today. Versandra Kennebrew is the author of Thank God for the Shelter, and if you would like more information, please email Street Beat. Go to the website at cw50.com. Thanks for watching, and I am Brenda Williams.